All right, really happy to have Riley Masters here. Riley, you're three-time state champ at Bangor, became one of the best milers. Actually, you hold the Maine all-time record right now for the mile. Running professionally now in Colorado. Just Riley, just one. Like, how are you holding up during this coronavirus time? Like, what have you been up to lately?
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I think the coronavirus has certainly been interesting for just about everybody, but for me, it holding up fairly well considering I was obviously preparing for the Olympic trials, and with those being postponed until next year, it was actually a little bit of a blessing for me as I was dealing with my first stress fracture, the first stress fracture in my career, and then now actually an Achilles injury. So I'm actually have surgery lined up for next Friday. So honestly, I guess I probably would have foregone the surgery, or I guess pushed it back until after the trials or the Olympics, had the schedule stayed. But now that things have been pushed back, it's gives me an opportunity to take care of some things.
Yeah, so that reaction when you saw that they were postponed, it almost seemed like almost a blessing in disguise, I guess, when you have all the injuries lined up and everything.
Exactly. I feel like with the stress fracture, I felt pretty confident that I could get back to where I needed to be for the trials. I mean, I was putting in at least 3 hours a day in the pool to stay fit. But once the pool shut down and things started really closing down, there was a little bit of anxiety. And then when things got postponed, I said, okay, at least this seems to work out, or it might work out well for me. It at least gives me a new lease on life.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I was really happy to have you on here is that, you're part of this like elite Maine crew that's been represented at, Olympic trials, world championships, stuff like that. You got, Ben True, Kate Hall, Isaiah Harris, Wilgo Hegan. And I guess what I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, like, when you see those people at meets, do you kind of go out of your way to talk to those guys, or like what's the kind of communication there?
Honestly, yeah. And then I think Rachel Schneider's another Mainer.
Oh,
I guess she didn't go to high school in Maine, but she grew up in Maine. But no, I really think it's kind of a small little fraternity of Maine runners. And as just anyone from Maine in general, whether you're a runner or not, you have that unique connection because it's obviously such a small population. But yeah, Ben and I have become very good friends throughout the years. We've had the same agent. I guess we've both had two different agents, Matt Lane and now Dan Lilo. So we actually, when we're at races, like we'll room together quite often. So whether it's at Pre or the London Diamond League, we've been roommates at both of those. And then he actually came out to Boulder to train this past winter, and we linked up for a lot of runs. Yeah, no, I think it's kind of neat seeing all these Maine runners and how well they're doing. I mean, considering how small the Maine population is relative to the rest of the country, and just how the relative amount of success that Maine runners are having is pretty impressive, I think. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
yeah. And I kind of want to go back a little bit to your time at Bangor. You became one of like, obviously the best miler at the state during the time, one of the best in New England. And so that process of just becoming like this guy who's running like 416 in high school, all of a sudden, was it your sophomore year or your junior year that you broke for at UMaine?
Sophomore year, yeah.
Sophomore year, and then just to see that kind of jump in fitness, like what were you kind of thinking during that time? Was it like when did running sub 4 become like a real possibility for you?
Oh man, I think my time at Bangor was funny because it wasn't until the state meet my junior year that I broke 430 for the first time, and I actually ran a PR of 421 at the state meet. And it was funny because like in my mind, 420 was like what made you an elite miler as like a high schooler. It's like if you could run 420 or under 420, you were good. So really, I think the first time when I ran in the 420s, that was the first time I said, okay, maybe I could be good at running the mile. And then I PR'd, I ran 407 my freshman year of college, but obviously you're still pretty far away at that point from breaking 4 minutes. And I still remember there was a guy from Brunswick named Pat Horan who I'm like probably dating myself there, but like about 10 years ago, he was just the guy who was like kind of like the big running nerd in the state of Maine. And I remember having a conversation with him once, and he just said like, hey man, you should try to break 4 minutes. I was like, are you going to try to break 4 minutes like this coming season? And at the time, I think my PR was 406. And I was like, that seems a little far-fetched. And he was like, I think you can do it. And it was like that conversation I was like, well, I guess maybe I should give it a shot. And so, yeah, I guess it was like a few weeks before I first broke 4 minutes that I kind of considered it to be a legitimate possibility. It was like fitness was starting to line up. There seemed to be an opportunity that was going to line up. And then, yeah, sure enough, it happened.
Yeah. And then was it that indoor season that you got fifth at NCAAs that year?
It was, yeah. So obviously that was, it went from trying to sneak in NCAAs to then being fifth in the NCAA. So it was, yeah, kind of a whirlwind from a kid who was a 406 miler like 2 months prior to that.
Yeah. Do you remember that meet at all where you got fifth, where you just all of a sudden you come from, you're running at Bangor, running at UMaine, kind of just sort of not necessarily in the middle of nowhere, but then you're just all of a sudden running against literally the best guys in the country. What was kind of going through your mind during that process?
Yeah, it was a little strange. I mean, even like once we realized I was most likely going to get into NCAAs, I remember a guy, AJ Acosta, reached out to me, and like he was a Foot Locker champ, and all of a sudden he was sending me a Facebook message, and this was back when people communicated on Facebook, and he was like, "Hey Riley, I think like just to let you know, these are the Oregon guys we're going to scratch. I think this guy will scratch, so you'll probably get in, but like congratulations." And so I remember being like, "Whoa!" I was like starstruck. I was like, "Whoa, AJ Acosta just messaged me." And then I get to the meet, and obviously the goal was just to make the final. And I think once I did that, all the pressure was off. I still remember like putting myself in position in the prelim and just right off the leader's shoulder. And then I remember like coming down the home stretch and like never really having that much faith in my kick. And I remember coming down the home stretch and just like running very scared. And I was like, man, I can't believe these guys aren't passing me. And then sure enough, I got to the line. I think I finished second in my heat. And I kind of just stopped and like realized I made the final, but I stopped almost like suddenly, like a meter beyond the finish line. And just this train of people came piling behind me and actually knocked me over.
Wow.
So it was kind of it was pretty funny. But yeah, once I made the final, I actually told my coach at the time, I was like, I'm just going to go for the win. I'm going to give it a shot. And then sure enough, I got a little intimidated about halfway through the race and like faded back to the back of the pack, but still managed. I think it was my highest individual finish in NCAAs.
Yeah, I mean, being fifth in the country just seems just otherworldly to me. So I mean, that's just a really impressive run.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun.
And so I guess kind of going off of that, you didn't really have like you said that you didn't have much for expectations going in, but then after that, there must be some type of pressure there from a personal standpoint. How did you kind of cope with that for the rest of your time at college, knowing that you're like now one of the best milers or middle distance runners in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was obviously when you get just kind of shot to that level like, that quickly, it was difficult to process, I guess. Like I wasn't really exactly sure. And like obviously once you finish fifth, it's like, okay, I don't ever want to finish any worse than that. I did several times since then, or I guess after that race. I think I went to the outdoor championships, finished 11th out of 12 in the final. So, I mean, it was difficult. It took me probably a good year and a half, maybe 2 years after that race to kind of taper my expectations and realize like that there was a lot more needed to go into it if I wanted to improve upon that performance rather than just showing up and expecting myself to finish that high. I had to go put in the work and make sure that I was doing what was necessary to, check those boxes and finish higher.
Right. And then when you're already that good, it seems like you're on the cusp of, running professionally. And obviously you are now. And you mind just kind of taking us through the process of like what that actually is when it comes to like finding an agent and just, like knowing who to trust? Like, how does that really work there?
Man, I mean, I've been doing this is my 7th year, and I would say it's still difficult to give you like a solid answer.
Right.
Now I'm an assistant coach or volunteer assistant coach with the University of Colorado, and we just had 3 athletes go professional. And like even watching them, and like I gave them every piece of advice that I had, and Jenny Simpson, same thing, because she's around as well. And even giving them this advice, it was still all of them felt like they were going in blind. And so it's kind of difficult, but really, I think there are 3 things that you choose from when you go professional. There's you have your agent who's going to coach you, and then who's going to represent you. And I think the thing that you that you have to prioritize is picking who's going to coach you and what position you're going to be in. So if I could go back and do it all over again, I think I would really emphasize who was going to coach me following my collegiate career. And so I think that's just the biggest thing. And then after that, the agent, they'll obviously help you find the right sponsor for yourself. But I think if you can put yourself in a good position where you're going to perform as a professional, then it helps the longevity of your career.
Right. Well, it seems like you certainly made that right decision with Wetmore. I mean, I feel like Wetmore is, he's like the goat of, distance coaching basically. So it seems like a really, really good choice there.
Certainly. Yeah. I had considered retiring in 2016 and moved to Colorado to get a job and be around my now wife. And when he reached out and said, I'll coach you, I was like, all right, well, now I have to do this. Which is obviously a fun thing.
Right. And kind of want to go back again to your high school career. I mean, people look at you, I feel like a lot of young runners, they kind of have idols to kind of like replicate. And I'm sure people look at you as somebody for inspiration. When you were kind of running, like, did you have any runners like in Maine or even just in general that you kind of looked up to that you kind of wanted to be like at all?
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, I obviously, the moment I saw a little bit of success, I got very hungry to like learn about who had done it before me. So guys like Ben True and Levi Miller and your brother Brandon were people that I really idolized, especially because they were all running at big D1 programs. I guess Levi and Brandon were both at Georgetown and Ben at Dartmouth. So those were kind of the guys that I saw as like, these were people who were in a similar position to myself. And then this is what they were able to go on and do. And I was obviously able to see the times that they ran and the success they were having. So yeah, it was kind of, I just looked at guys who were 4 or 5 years older than me in the state and wanted to follow them. And then obviously there were guys, I mean, even guys that went on to go to the University of Maine as well, guys like Jeff Caron and Mike Lansing were other people that I idolized and thought that I wanted to train like they did and like fit in with them.
Right. And I feel like almost that, I mean, maybe I'm saying this from my perspective since I'm 2 years younger than you, but I feel like some of the guys in my grade, like, Alex Moser and Kelton, I feel like a big influence on them going to UMaine was seeing your success. Do you think that had any influence at all?
I hope so. I remember their recruiting visit, and it was actually right before I broke 4 minutes. And it seemed like they were all pretty excited, but they all were considering other options. And then it was a few weeks later, I broke 4 minutes for the first time. And I think we had a good recruiting class that year with Kelton, Jason Cake, Alex Mosier, and a few others. And I think all of them signed like the week after I broke 4 minutes, it felt great, and it felt like, and that was something I wanted, especially for the program at the University of Maine, is I wanted to really help put it on the map and be something and like get that talent that we needed. And that was kind of a really fun thing for me, was seeing those guys being like, all right, we can succeed here and we want to have a great program. So I hope it had something to do with it, but they obviously had there are a lot of other great things about the University of Maine.
Exactly. And I guess kind of before I let you go, in high school, kind of want to stick with the main theme here, obviously, but like, is there any particular race that you're most proud of when you look back at Bangor during your time there?
Whew. I think if I'm getting a little long in the tooth, Sam. So I think maybe retirement's like not too far away. But I think when I look back at like my career, probably my fondest memories will be some of like the races I had at Bangor, because I was just so naive to the sport, and it was just so fun to see that success. I think, man, there are quite a few to choose from. I think what I'll go with is my junior year, we won the state championship. And so my PR at the time was 4:30. I think I was ranked third in the state. And there was a guy named Ben Rumry. I hope I'm saying that right. From what?
Was he from Biddeford?
I think he was from Thornton Academy.
Okay.
Thornton Academy was like one of the schools that we were contending against to win the state championship. And my teammate Casey Qualley at the time I'd never beat him. He was much better than I was. I think he was ranked first with like a 4:22 or 4:23. And we get into the race, 800 meters in, I take off like crazy. And I think that Casey's right on my back the entire time. And it turned out where like my parents have a video of it where I was probably almost 50 meters up on him with 300 meters to go. But I'm thinking in my head, because I had never beaten him before, he always outkicked me. I was like, Casey's going to beat me, whatever. I'm probably running like a little bit of a PR. My goal was to beat Ben Rumry. And we get to like 20 meters to go. And I remember like looking to both sides of me and being like, where's Casey? Why doesn't he pass me yet? And sure enough, he passed me like at the line. and we both ran personal best. I think I ran 4:21 and he ran 4:20. But just kind of a fun race where like I did it all for the team and dropped a significant chunk of time off. So it was cool to go 1-2 with like one of my, obviously now still a great friend of mine. And then to take that much of a chunk off my personal best and then contribute to a state championship. So that was probably my most fond memory.